ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right. A'udhu billahi samii minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So, continuing from our earlier session today, we talked about the salat and the incredible and eloquent form that it is that contains a vast and a meaning and the benefit of doing the salat and regarding the salat in the way that it needs to be regarded, so that it has a dynamic and effect on you, a healing and restorative and connective effect on one. So we're going this evening we're going to sing one qasida, and then we're going to go over the meaning. Sheikh Sadi suggested that we do that again, and I think that's a good idea. And then I'm going to go to talk a little bit more about the inner meanings and the dynamics of some of the other rituals, so-called rituals that we practice in the deen. For instance, I'll talk tonight about Hajj. Hajj being a microcosm of the macrocosm of our lives, and I'll get into that inshallah after we sing this. Mortaza, can you help me with this? It's going to be a little bit more difficult than the other one, but I'd like to do this one too. Now we'll sing this one, and let's do one and then do the refrain, and then everyone can join us in the refrain after 3 stanzas. Do you mind sitting closer? I did something wrong. This song sums up what we spoke about together earlier today. You'll see it is quite amazing, the manifestation of the essence. So where that is. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. الشمس بعد من العالمين أنا غيبي دوحا منك شفت عن ذاتي ليلة صوت روحا نعمة تلك الليلة قد أباحت بحبها لخيل لها لما تزيد شوقها فأضحى أسيرا في مرياد غرامها ونادت له الأشواق حاذي كهوسها الله 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 يا مولانا الله الله بفضلك كلي فما بريحت حتى سقط بكاسها فلا لم فشرب حديثها وما هي إلا حضرة الحق وهداها تجلت بأشكال تلون نورها فأبدت بديع الصنع في طي كونها فلاحظ صفات الحب فيك ظهورها. الله 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 يا مولانا. الله الله بفضلك كلها. فوالله ما حاز سعادة كلها سوى من بدا أبدا ذليلا يؤومها. فغطت قبيح الوصف منه بوصفها ولاحت له الأنوار يبدو شعورها. الله 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 يا مولانا. الله 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 بفضلك كلي. فغاب عن الحس الذي كان قاطعا وعنق معنا لا يحل فراقها. فحرر أخي قصدا وأرد عني سوى يهب على الأحباب منك أسمها. وتفتح سمعا لفواد من سكيك لأن لطيف علم منها دليلها. فمنى علينا ذا إيمان بوصالها وغيبنا عن حس موجودة كونها. الله 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 يا مولانا. الله الله بفضلك كلي. الله 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 يا مولانا. الله الله بفضلك كلها. So here the Sheikh is speaking in a metaphoric and a way, and it begins like this. He says, has the light of the sun appeared from the world of the unseen, or have the veils of Layla been lifted from her essence? I want to say that again. Has the light of the sun appeared from the world of the unseen, or have the veils of Layla been lifted from her essence? Here he's describing a state in which he's referring to Allah Azza wa Jal in the feminine. And he is experiencing, as he's in the metaphoric sense, the sun rising as though the light of Allah is risen and has cut through and burned away any of the veils and the illusions that he had held in his being. And he speaks to Allah saying that, has she or Al-Layla been lifted, the veils from her essence? Then he goes on and says, yes, the longing of Layla for her beloved friend has grown until she has revealed her love. See, it switches it around. It's Allah's love for His creation, for each one of us, that manifests within us to know Him, or in this case, he's speaking of Allah in the feminine sense. But it is reversed. But it's at the same time. It's Allah. If you love Allah, Allah loves you. It's the same thing. It's one action. So that he has become a captive of her ardent desire and the longing which are her goblets called out to him. That he is saying here that at this point that she, or Allah, has captivated his heart. He is completely in that light, and he experiences as Allah wants for him this love. And he says that which are the captive of her ardent desire, and the longing, which are her goblets called out to him. The longing is that he is awakening to Allah's signs, to God's signs in the world. Goblets are what? Goblets are that which contain in this sense wine. And what is wine? Wine is meaning. So he is referring here that Allah has taken him by reading and able to appreciate and see and experience the meanings behind form. So he's now completely immersed in this. She did not leave him until she had given him a drink from her goblet. There is no blame for this drink, for the wine is her speech. Now this is what we were talking about earlier, that all of creation is nothing other than Allah's speech. Everything that we see is stamped with Allah's intention to be known. When you begin to awaken and your heart, the mirror of your heart becomes more pure and polished, then that which you reflect on in the world and in your experiences in life, you read it as Allah speaking to you. Just like to remind you what we talked about earlier, when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he was on Mount Hira, the first word that came to him as a revelation was Iqra, read. Read. Read what? It's Allah's articulation. It's Allah's language. This whole entire creation is designed in such a way to communicate to the heart of the mu'min what the nature of the human being is and the nature of Allah Azza wa Jal. Then he says, and she is the presence of the truth alone, who manifests herself with forms whose every light is different. So here again, it comes back to language. He's saying that Allah manifests this creation in a myriad of way, in multiplicity. But all of that multiplicity, all of that letters of this creation that this creation is made up of, are communications, are articulations from that reality to, in hope, and to communicate to the human being what Allah is saying to you and reflecting who you are. And these have shown the uniqueness of the form designs contained in her being. So look at the attributes of the beloved manifest in you. Now this then takes us back to what we were saying earlier. The things that you see and you witness, that you read, they're not out there. They're in here. You are reading the reality of your own being. When you see the mountains, like we said earlier, and you see beauty, where are you seeing and experiencing beauty? It's within you. It's reflecting in the mirror of your heart. When Allah created Adam, He said in objection to Shaitan, He said, what are you going to do? You know, you're going to put someone on earth who's going to cause problems and bloodshed. And Allah says, you do not know what we know, what I know. Or rather, you don't know what He knows, because He taught Adam the names of Allah, all of them. So intrinsically and in our fitrah, in our nature, in our core, we contain all of the Asma Husna. And that Asma Husna is the foundational realities that are the basis of all of creation. And the language that those then complexify into are the language that we read when we awaken, when we read our lives. That's why this creation is often called the book. And what is this book? This book, each person has their own individual reading of it also. Like we said earlier, that your experience will be different than mine, but the story is the same. All of the names and the foundational realities are the same. So he goes on to say, by Allah, none obtain complete bliss except the one who becomes a humble slave and seeks her out. So here, another prescription of how this can happen. It only happens by humility. And humility is a way in which you then cut through your own agenda, where you put aside your egoic self, where you constantly refer back to the light within your heart. Not only are you referring back to the light in your heart, but you're doing actions in the service of others as well. These are other ways that Allah has designed for us so that we can put aside our own agenda and experience what Allah wants from us. You know, this whole idea that it's so hard to know what Allah wants us to do, or, you know, we have this idea that what do we do, what does Allah want from me, and so on. You can know that, but what you have to do is put your own agenda aside. But that takes effort, it takes enthusiasm. And like here, this is what he's saying. He says, become humble slave and seek her out. You need to actively do it, actively remember it. It just doesn't come on a Jummah or on 5 times Salat, you know, or like on a church thing. It has to be a regular feature of your daily consciousness, of your daily situation. There was a brother we were talking to earlier about, like, again, compartmentalizing our lives, the dunya and the path and so on, and that, you know, when you're involved in your daily life, whether you're a business person or a teacher or a mother or a father or whatever role that you're playing, there is a way in each moment for you to see what Allah is trying to tell you. One of the things that I do, I see in my business, I see probably between 15 and 20 customers every day. And what I do personally is that when I'm talking to someone, all of a sudden I will kind of turn down the volume of what they're saying. And I'll turn down in my head what I'm thinking, that, you know, here's a customer, but I don't want to see them as a customer anymore. I want to see them as Allah brought someone in front of me. What am I to see in this moment? What am I to learn? And if I turn the volume down for what they're saying, I mean, I'm still listening, but I'm just turning it down. And I'm letting a presence come into my heart of witnessing. In that witnessing, then you change the quality of that moment. You know, instead of being identified with a seller and a customer or a teacher and a student or whatever, you have a different view. You view it from a higher position, a higher conscious position, so that you see the dynamic of the relationship at that moment, but you're also seeing it from a perspective of witnessing. And in that witnessing, that's when amazing things happen. You may hear something and see something in those moments that give you access to each other's hearts in a way that would not happen if you just saw each other as a customer and a seller. You know, it all of a sudden brings it into another dynamic. Try it, you'll see it works, especially with your intimates. If you're involved, let's say if you're married and you're having an exchange with your wife, and all of a sudden it becomes maybe, you know, back and forth, and it's a bit argumentative. For a moment, just shut down on the inside. Don't stop listening, but listen with another ear. And when you listen with that other ear, you'll see all of a sudden that it affects the other person. Don't forget, our souls are connected with each other. In the unseen, in the ghaib, things are happening far more than in the dhahir. When you think something is happening in the dhahir, it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's much more happening in the unseen than in the seen. When you change your inner and you see from a different perspective, it has a ripple effect. It has a synergetic effect on an unseen level, and you change the quality of that moment, and something special can happen. Remember this and try it out. It works, believe me, it works. Then he says, and thus she immersed the ugliness of his nature in the beauty of hers, and lights shone from him, their rays appearing. Again, he's describing here that once you let go of your own attributes, you let go of your own agenda, then Allah's agenda takes over. So you then, instead of reflecting your meanness, you're reflecting Allah's Kareem, His generosity. Instead of reflecting your like he's saying your ugliness, you're reflecting her beauty, because that beauty is already in there, because you're now immersed in the light of Allah. So this is what happens. This is the transformative process that all of us want to go through. We want to imbibe and become conscious of Allah's attributes that are residing in our heart. As we are all Bani Adam, we're all children of Adam, so we all contain the Asma Husna. World and life circumstances, everyone here has those diverse life circumstances, are all designed by Allah Azza wa Jal to give you the optimum opportunity, so to speak, challenge and opportunity to reflect those Asma Husna in your life. But we don't do it because we get identified with the moment. We get identified with who we are and who we think we are. And that's why we need to learn these things, to let go of our agenda, to quiet ourselves, within ourselves, to interact with each other as mirrors of the Prophet ﷺ said that mu'min is the mirror of the mu'min. But you have to be in that state of iman and that inner dynamic that we're talking about here. And when you do that, then you reflect those higher attributes. You reflect Allah's attributes, and it completely changes your life. It changes not only your life, but everybody around you. And then he says, so that he withdrew from the sensory, which is a barrier. This is what we're talking about. So that he withdrew from the sensory, which is a barrier, and embraced the meaning from which it is unlawful to be separated. Let me read that again. It is incredible. So that he withdrew from the sensory, you withdraw from the identification with what your senses are telling you. You're now listening and seeing with a higher consciousness, with heart eyes, with basirat, from your heart. You withdrew from, which is you go then beyond this barrier of the senses, and you embrace the meaning from which it is unlawful to be separated from. Meaning that you see that the person in front of you or the moment in front of you it's Yad Allah, it's the hand of Allah, it's Allah's there in front of you. You're missing it because we are never separated from God ever. Allah Azza wa Jal there is a seamlessness in Him, which if we see a seam and separation, it is the illusion of ourselves. Because Allah is one, and we are from one, and all of us are from nafsun wahida, one self. If you see separation, then it becomes a barrier to seeing the beyond that, seeing by the light of Allah. And it's unlawful because you're saying that Allah doesn't exist at that moment. By your behavior, by your being, you're seeing barriers. You're seeing, and you're identifying with things that only exist because Allah put them there for you to transcend them, right? They're not there as realities. They're there as opportunities to go beyond, to transcend. Then he says, therefore, let your goal be to commit yourself, O my brothers and sisters, and avoid otherness. Avoid otherness. And then, if you avoid otherness, he says, and her gentle breeze will waft over you and the beloved ones from you. It means that then you become a conduit of that light. When you when you pull yourself out of the picture, when you surrender your agenda and you go within your heart and come from within your heart and see and experience from your heart, then you feel the breeze of Allah Azza wa Jal come over you. And that breeze then comes not only over you, but through you, so that everyone around you senses it. You know that you've all experienced this before. When you have that moment when somebody looks at you and they say, hey, are you okay? No, you were really okay. And they say, wow, I feel something really, like you're in some presence, you're in a state. Believe me, it's communicative. It's also, people taste it from you. So it's also, if you do this, it's a way of serving other people. When you purify your own heart, then it can't help but other people to benefit from that as well. So he's describing this as a breeze from Allah, and how it breezes through you and then it breezes from you to other people. You become a conduit of that light and of that goodness. And you will open the hearing of the wayfarer's heart, because the all-pervading nature of the knowledge from her is proof of her. Right? I'll read that again. You will open the hearing of the wayfarer, meaning you will benefit other people by your state, by your words, by your being, by your actions, because the all-pervading nature of this knowledge from her is a proof of her. So the Sheikh is describing that this surrender and this access to the light within your heart and to the ruh within you and how it affects other people is the proof of this reality, of the oneness of our souls, of the oneness of our being. It proves it right there. But you can't describe this to an atheist, right? Because it's that old saying that if you haven't tasted a mango, how are you going to describe that to another person who's never tasted a mango before? It's only when a person tastes a mango, they go, that's a mango, right? And so it's the same here. You don't know this light and this experience unless you've tasted it yourself. And if you become a conduit of that light, then those around you who are worthy of that, who Allah has chosen for that, they will taste it. And then you have an intimacy developed in that relationship with it could be a brother or a sister or a wife or a husband or whatever, that is far more productive for you and best for you. And then he ends it by saying, may we always have the blessing of union with her, and may we always withdraw from every existent thing. Meaning, again, he's referring that we only see the hand of Allah. We strive to see the light of Allah in every circumstance. We try to read at every circumstance what Allah is communicating to us, and that we don't get identified with the temporal, with the ephemeral. It's always good to remember that all of us are going to die. The world that as we know it is going to end. This experience of this outer creation is just a moment in time, but in that moment of time is everything. It's really in this moment is everything. So he and counsels us to withdraw from identification with the outer and give it its due, but at the same time refer to that which is forever and constant within your heart. Okay. So I wanted also to further talk about the eloquence and the pristine meanings contained within some of the practices of Islam. Earlier we talked about Salat, and I want to just go over briefly about Hajj. So Hajj has some amazing rituals, and Hajj, it turns out that everything in Hajj is like a microcosm of the macrocosm of life. All the elements, the major elements of life, are contained within the practices and the rituals contained within Hajj. For instance, one of the practices of Hajj is that when you go on sa'i between Safa and Marwa, you run between two places. Right? We were talking about this earlier. Safa and Marwa are two hills in which Hajar ran between because she was seeking water. They were in the desert and they didn't have water, so they were seeking water. So why do we do this? Why do we run back and forth? Okay, one can say on a superficial level we do it because Hajr did it, and it was a result of Allah's mercy that Zamzam was discovered at that moment. But let's look at it from a different perspective. Isn't it that we are running from Safa and Marwa every day in our life? Isn't it that we are running from one place that we are content and then we're discontent because we want something, so we then run to something that we want and we desire, and then when we get to that point we go, well, now that I have it, now what? And then emerging within ourselves is another desire, something else that we want to acquire or that we want to fulfill in life. So we turn around and we run towards something else. And so this is what in modern times we call like the rat race, right, of life. Safa and Marwa, this is the metaphor of the modality of not only modern man, but historic man, that mankind, that we allow ourselves to be overwhelmed and taken over by the things that we desire, and we run between one thing and another in a frantic manner. Like if you go, I don't know if you, all of you who have done Hajj or done Umrah, you know you have to run it, you have to go in a pace. You're impressed with this idea that you're having to go from one place to the other. That is how we experience our lives. But here's something key. When on Hajj and on Umrah, when you go from Safa to Marwa, once you get to either Safa and Marwa from Safa and Marwa, you stop and you turn towards Kaaba. You turn yourself towards Kaaba and you say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So the idea there is that it impresses upon you in that Safa and Marwa running back and forth, that whatever it is that you are going for in life, you have to, when you achieve a certain thing, turn it towards your Creator and say Allahu Akbar, really that it's Allah is the one that you really want. Allah is the ultimate satisfaction. Allah is the ultimate goal. If you don't do that, then you get caught in the Safa and Marwa dilemma, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But on Hajj, it tells us, yes, go back and forth, but then remember Allah. So it impresses upon us to do this, but remember Allah. And that way it becomes a transformative experience. Another thing that I wanted to share with you was about the circumambulation of the Kaaba. It's so amazing. The closest that you can get to one point is a circle. You can move around the Kaaba, and of course it's described as the angels moving around the Kaaba. But really, in reality, it is the closest that you can to get to that point, which is Kaaba. And when you're outside the Kaaba, there's direction. So wherever you are in the precinct of Mecca, or wherever you are in the world, you have, as we said earlier, you have to find Qibla, and you turn towards Qibla, and you have the two mirrors facing the Bayt Allah, which is your heart, and the Bayt Allah, which is the Kaaba, and therefore you reflect that unitive reality within you. Well, the Kaaba is an example also of the relative world and the absolute world. Outside of the Kaaba, there's direction. So outside of Kaaba, you can find Qibla. You can use mathematics. You go east, north, south, west, whatever it is. But what about inside the Kaaba? When you're standing inside the Kaaba, there are people who are fuqaha who have made decisions about what's best. But in reality, inside the Kaaba, there is no direction. It is again showing us the meaning that the Kaaba represents the transcendent reality. It represents the Dhat of Allah, the essence of Allah, because when you're inside the Kaaba, you can pray from any direction. You can pray up, you can pray down, you can pray, because inside the Kaaba there is no directions. So it's a sign of both the relative and the absolute. Outside the Kaaba, in this world, in this dunya that we exist in, we find the Qibla, but inside the Kaaba, inside your heart, there is no direction. Inside your heart is the essence, and inside your heart is the forever the timeless, the beyond time and beyond space. And when you're in the Kaaba, you're in the precinct of beyond time and beyond space. These are two elements of the Hajj. And then finally, the one other thing that I wanted to bring out was on Arafat. When you stand there alone and it's called Arafah because at that moment you are seeking knowledge of Allah. Where you're there in wearing a seamless, again, this amazing mithal, this amazing analogy of wearing a seamless garment, as though you're not wearing anything. Of course, you're wearing something, but it has to be seamless, just as though it's saying that you have to be in a state of seamlessness. You have to give up the concepts of this and that and the other and abandon yourself. And when you stand on the plain of Arafat, that is where you're begging Allah to relieve you of the illusion of separation. And that is why it says that Hajj is Arafah, that all the other aspects of Hajj are all about transformation of yourself, of a vision and a microcosm of the different elements that we live and how we conduct ourselves in the world. But Arafah is where you find the ultimate communion, the ultimate resolve, the ultimate abandonment of the self, and stand there in knowledge. And what is that knowledge? And that knowledge is that there's only one, and that you are not separate from that one, and that you've never been separate from that one. And that's what Hajj is supposed to impress upon us. That's why it's only required once in a lifetime, because once you get that what life's about, and Arafah, and you have that knowledge, you don't need to go on Hajj again. You've done it. You've made the Hajj, meaning you've understood the dynamics of the world and life. So that's what I wanted to share with you a little bit today. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wassalamun ala mursalin. Alhamdulillahi rabbil